What bands have a bad reputation when they really shouldn't? Which bands are always on the tips of people's tongues when it comes to dissing them, being controversial or polarizing? How did we get to that point, and is it justified? In this video, I want to challenge some of those conceptions, some of those bands, and give my own perspective on it. And don't take this as some sort of massive endorsement for any of these bands, because in the grand scheme of things, there are multiple bands here that I don't really listen to that much. I can just see the reasons people critique them and think it's a little stupid. Keyboard warriors love running their fingers online, and ever since the advent of the internet age, they've been getting hated because you can very clearly notice that the vast majority of these bands started getting the shit that they got once the internet, once social media was a thing, even though a lot of them predate it. I'm just gonna start with Slipknot. It seems like a lot of times people just have this sort of rage towards Slipknot. Even some of the fan base gets into fights with other fans of Slipknot. I don't know how the fuck that makes sense. I've heard a lot of reasons that people don't like Slipknot. A lot of it seems to boil down to you don't like the masks, you think it's corny, cheesy, you think it's a gimmick. Maybe you don't like Corey Taylor as a person, and because you don't like the frontman, you can't like the rest of the band, you can't like the music they produce. Some people just flat out hate nu metal, although don't let some Slipknot fans hear you call them nu metal because they'll get their panties in a bunch for some reason. You can dislike a band for their music or their message, you can just not vibe with them for whatever reason, but it seems like I always see Slipknot brought up in conversations when it comes to the most hated metal bands. And to me, it always seems like it boils down more to these external factors than it is their music itself. And if you're gonna go down the path, which I have seen this many times, of saying that it has to do with their lyrics, they're too angsty, you could cut yourself with the edge. That was my time period. That's when I grew up. I know it very well by heart, and I can guarantee you that there were dozens of other alt metal bands and nu metal bands that were even more angst-driven than Slipknot. So as much as you want to say that Slipknot is the band for the Kyles that are on Call of Duty running their mouth saying the N-word and the R-slur, I don't really see it. This might be a little bit of a controversial one, especially considering the opinions that I have said on this channel. I think Burzum gets a lot more hate than it deserves. Most of the people that don't particularly like Burzum don't like Varg. They don't agree with his politics, with his social standing, with the perception of him, the cult of personality, the things that he projects out there, and all of the mass people who think that he is a messiah and a pariah worthy of worshiping at the altar of. Trust me when I say, I absolutely see you, I agree, I don't really like Varg as a person, and I have said many times that I don't. But I own merchandise from Burzum. I love Burzum's discography. I especially like a lot of the dark ambient stuff. And my opinion when it comes to Burzum is that if you solely don't support Burzum or don't want to listen to Burzum simply because it's Varg, I think that you are being a little bit hypocritical. You can be moralistic all you want. At the end of the day, if you don't want to listen to something because you don't like the person creating that, that is your prerogative, but I promise you're not taking away anything from Varg or from Burzum as a project by not supporting it. And I think that you have to use your same standards of morality with everything if you're going to cast that shadow on Burzum and on Varg. You have to be consistent with your beliefs, and if you can't separate the art from the artist with Burzum, I promise you that there are so many problematic bands, specifically in black metal. If you are a notorious black metal fan, most likely you like at least one or many bands that have some problematic members that maybe have some problematic beliefs, or at least beliefs that you might not agree with. And Varg sort of having this easy target on his back, it's easy with the stature that he has built up with his personality and with his beliefs, putting them out there and getting all of these followers that really adopted his beliefs and take them out into the world. You have to put those moral standards to everything if you're going to put it towards Burzum, because as much as I think that Varg was problematic in his life and continuously spread a lot of hateful things, there are so many other black metal people that have done the same thing. And he kind of is dime a dozen when it comes to his beliefs. It's a similar story of like Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse. Just because Varg is as big as he is, and just because Ronnie is as big as he is, you suddenly think that his message is of all importance and it's the most dangerous. But I promise you, there are hundreds, thousands of musicians and people who believe the same things that they believe. They're just not as big and they don't have the same platform. So it seems louder, it seems like there is more noise to it, and it blends in with the static as everything else gets lost in the background. The next band I want to talk about is Creed, and this is a band that I don't really have that much to say about, but I just see them brought up so much. When I was growing up, I remember how popular Creed were. They had this big fan base. They were very popular. They got a lot of radio play, and they really stake their claim in the alt-rock and post-grunge movements. They hit that upward trajectory, they hit that peak and that plateau, and then there was just this downward spiral. You could kind of lump Alter Bridge in with this, where suddenly it became kind of popular to hate Creed. Was it to the same degree of a band like Nickelback? No, but I think there is a sort of sense of familiarity when it comes to the way people felt about Nickelback versus the way people felt about Creed. It really did seem like if you were one of those bands that fit that sort of post-grunge alt-rock aesthetic, the Traps, the Stains, the Puddle of Muds, you were immediately thought of as being cringe. Luckily, I don't think people feel that way as much about Creed anymore, but there still is that sort of pitter-patter with them. Next band I want to talk about is Rage Against the Machine. Oh boy. See, I love Rage. I've always loved Rage. I think they're a phenomenal band. But I don't know how to tell you guys this. Rage Against the Machine, they did not reinvent the wheel, and they are not going to start the fucking Bolshevik revolution. They are not the communists that are coming to take all of your shit and equally distribute it. They are not this governmental entity that is going to take your guns away and enact all of this violence. They are simply a band with staunch political stances, and that's what Rage haters love to latch onto. They say that their politics are dog shit, and I also think there is kind of that underbelly of people who think that they are hypocritical in and of themselves because they are pretty capitalistic in how they approach their merchandise and how they approach their marketing and branding, and it's funny that a band that is so heavy against those sort of beliefs kind of fit that mold. It's like the Che Guevara effect, where like he was super put out there as like merchandise and a symbol, and money was made from a bunch of capitalists, so it seemingly went against what he fought for and what he believed anyway. I will give you a point in that regard that Rage Against the Machine fitting that criteria is funny as fuck and poetic, if not ironic. But you can listen to something without agreeing with the politics. I don't even know why I need to make that point. It should be self-explanatory. And I hate to report it if I'm gonna rain on your parade, but so many of the bands that are adjacent to Rage Against the Machine also believe in a lot of left-leaning things. A lot of metal bands believe in left-leaning things, and there's a lot of bands that believe in right-leaning things. Why the fuck do the politics matter? Rage Against the Machine are not the first to put politics in their music. It has literally been done since the advent of rock and roll, if not further back. There have always been people challenging the status quo, and as I'm saying this, I can't believe I have to say this. They're not gonna come knocking on your door. The only people that we can direct our ire towards that are gonna come knocking on your door are fucking Jehovah Witnesses. Them, they are properly rated. They're perfectly rated. So the next band is probably going to get me some hate, and that is Limp Bizkit. I want to say, I was not a Limp Bizkit fan growing up. I loved nu metal, I loved alt metal, didn't give a shit about Limp Bizkit. Couldn't tell you the vast majority of their discography, know the bare minimum about them. But coming from a position of growing up around people who grew up with the 2000s metal and rock scene, nu metal scenes, Limp Bizkit was a tremendous influence on so many people's lives, and as much as Fred Durst is a dickbag, they mattered. It's kind of the Ronnie Radke, the Varg effect, where people sort of project their hatred towards Fred Durst and they make that their opinion of the entire band. It's kind of similar to how people feel about Franz from Attila or even Corey Taylor from Slipknot. There's also a level of sort of pure blood innocence to how people approach it. I'm not going to say everyone is just a gatekeeper and leave it at that, but I will say that Limp Bizkit was one of the most rap-centric nu metal bands on the block and based a lot of their material around that. Now, I don't think it's easy enough to chalk it up to that because look at how successful and important and amazing Linkin Park were, and they had a ton of hip-hop influence in their music. Mike Shinoda just rapped pretty much. I guess it's something to do with the aesthetic of how Fred Durst approached it, that sort of white boy angst. It's just one of those days! But Limp Bizkit are not worthy of as much hate as I think they get. You can dislike the person, but Limp Bizkit didn't really do anything wrong. They just made dumb, fun, sort of party-friendly nu metal music, and were massively influential for so many bands that came after them, and are probably going to continue to be that, especially as more people get older and older that grew up with it. I feel like these next two are going to be really, really funny. The first I'm going to say is Breaking Benjamin. This is one of my favorite bands, period, and I have always heard them get called cheesy, corny, dime a dozen. They make the same album over and over. Brother, do you not know how many fucking bands make the same album over and over? Why is it that Breaking Benjamin can get this sort of distinction. Have you not seen Cannibal Corpse? And mind you, I love Cannibal Corpse. I've seen them live twice. Somehow Breaking Benjamin just gets this association. And this kind of goes hand in hand with what I said about like the Creed, Stain, Saliva, Puddle of Mud, that sort of thing, where it's like if you were at all associated with post-grunge, alt-rock, alt-metal, you were immediately held to a different standard. You were cringe. You were the grand funk master of cringe. But if you're going to say that Breaking Benjamin aren't original, that they make the same music, I give you that. I understand that. I even agree with you. I think Breaking Benjamin don't really make a lot of original ideas, but that doesn't have to always be the case. You sometimes need those bands that you can always go back to that are comfortable, that are familiar. There are thousands of bands out there that are innovating, that are experimenting, that are pushing the envelope and boundaries. Do you really need to get your panties in a bunch because there is a band that knows their audience, knows their formula, knows their pattern, and plays to that because they've gotten damn good at it. So good at it that other bands fucking clearly want to be them. Motionless in White have just become Breaking Benjamin in recent memory. And similarly, let's talk about Five Finger Death Punch. I've actually gotten the chance to VIP meet Five Finger Death Punch, funnily enough, at a Breaking Benjamin concert of all things. So it's kind of the opposite effect of Rage Against the Machine. People don't like Ivan's politics. They don't like the band's politics because even past like the veteran stuff, because as much as people want to project, I don't think anyone is against the way that they are for veterans. Most people support veterans. They just don't support the wars. They just don't support the violence. It's not about fucking with the military. It's about the military having to do what they do in the first place. And Five Finger Death Punch notoriously attracts a fan base that tend to be more on the right, that tend to be some of the more sycophant zealots of the right. In a similar way to how a lot of people hate Rage Against the Machine because of the politics they fight for, there is the other side of the spectrum of people that don't like Five Finger Death Punch because they shove so much in your face of the opposite. They're always flying the American flags, fight for the veterans, all of this stuff about like right-wing talking points, and it's no surprise that not only the fan base, but publications, the critics that like them the most tend to stray on that path as well. And in my opinion, that's fine. As long as you aren't hurting anyone with your politics, you can believe whatever you want. That's the beauty of America. That's the beauty of liberty and freedom, the pursuit of happiness. It just kind of seems to boil down to, I don't like their politics, so I'm not going to listen to them, which I understand, but it's kind of the Burzum effect. If you're going to put that sort of moral standard to one thing because you don't agree with it, you kind of have to use that with everything, because I think picking and choosing is just kind of bullshit, a little stupid. But I want to know what your guys' opinions are of this list, as well as the bands that you think are overhated, no matter what the genre is. You can let me know down in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.